I'm back. I don't know what happened just then. The strangest things seem to be happening to Backchannel the last couple of days, but, we're working on it. This is a big ordeal, Here I am in Los Angeles. Max has joined us from Virginia. Kale's in Texas. I mean, this is like a thing, so I apologize for disappearing. I was totally here, and then suddenly, something happened. I don't know what it was. But, sometimes I think, how is it even possible that this technology even works? But it does. So if you want to chat to me, you can just introduce yourself to your device. If you've got an Echo Show, then you can see me and you can also talk to it. You just say your activation word followed by say and then your message. And then that comes here. So Max, you can do that because you've got an Echo Show device, whereas Kale in Texas is just listening to us. So you might want to go to our new web chat platform, which is on the website at backchannel.tv. That's how you do that. And you can just send me messages anytime and be part of this show. I'm Anthony Davis. Hi, Max. Max says hi. Appreciate that, Max. It's just after 9 here on the West Coast, and it's just after 12 on the East Coast. So wherever you are in the middle, then you're very welcome to Backchannel. I'm here between Monday, Friday, 9 and 11 in the morning, and we just look through the morning papers. We take a look at what's happening across the United States, and we analyze some of the big stories of the day, but we also look at some of the local papers in local states and find out what's happening in Texas or in Virginia, for example. So we'll do that in just a couple of moments, and then later on we're going to focus on some bigger stories, some of the stuff that maybe we could dive a little deeper into. So who is Florida Governor DeSantis, and why should we be paying attention to what's happening in the Sunshine State? Yes, I know you're in Virginia, Max. That's why I said it, because you told your device where you were and it told me. So this is the technology that is Backchannel. I know who you are and where you are. I don't know anything else. I don't know anything else about you other than who you are and where you are, so please don't worry. But whatever you want to say to me, you can just say to your device, and I will hear it right here. Far-right congressman will find out his fate as he faces the House regarding a violent video he posted online of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So we'll be looking into that and why it is that there are some Congress people who are increasingly extremist in their views. Also, hybrid working. Is it possible to find a balance between the real and the virtual world, is the question. And also celebrating the American inventor Douglas Engelbart, who invented the mouse. And I have a mouse here, and I wouldn't say he might have invented something that didn't look anything like that. I mean, look at that. Isn't that like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? I wonder who designed this. I wonder if it was Johnny Ive. Look at that. I was actually given this. Look at that. The mouse. Oh, hang on. Just pooped on me. Dad jokes. I'm a dad. So we'll be talking about the life without a mouse, which in some worlds is chaos. But first, let's just jump straight into the morning papers. Incidentally, if you don't have an Echo device, then you could watch this show on YouTube. It's a live stream, and you can also catch up on episodes as well. So just search Anthony Davis Backchannel Anthony Davis on YouTube, and then the show will appear as if by magic. Okay, the LA Times is how we're going to start today's show. I really feel like we kind of packed a lot into that introduction. Normally I take a whole lot longer to say so few things, but today we packed a whole load in. I must say the lighting is looking better today as well. I've done a whole load of work, dealing with this face and everything, trying to, maybe it's just my face. It was my birthday yesterday. Might have mentioned that. Last night went out for a couple of drinks with my brother and had a bit of dinner, and so really I should be very hungover. But I don't really drink. And this is a really good way to stop hangovers. Just don't drink. See? My whole life I've never had a hangover. I'm a little hungover this morning because I had a couple of drinks last night. 3 states nearing new deal on water 2.5 years after signing a deal. Oh, hi. Thank you, Max. Appreciate that. Very good of you to wish me a happy birthday by talking to your Echo Show. 2.5 years after signing a deal aimed at averting a damaging crisis along the Colorado River, water officials from California, Arizona, and Nevada are discussing plans to take even less water from the shrinking river and leave it in Lake Mead in an effort to prevent the reservoir from falling to dangerously low levels. Yes, representatives of water agencies from the 3 states said they are firming up the details of a deal that would leave an additional 500,000 acre-feet of water in the reservoir next year. And the same again in 2023. I mean, this is a big issue, isn't it, for lots of places. There's just not enough water. That's why we keep having droughts here in California and in Arizona. And so this is another one of those initiatives to kind of improve the water supply. Rather impactful photo on the front of the LA Times this morning showing tanks and performers. Hi, Stacey. Thank you for joining us again this morning on Backchannel. Nice to have you yesterday. Great to have you today. An image of tanks and performers dressed in military uniforms, part of the mass gala marking the 100th anniversary of China's Communist Party at Olympic National Stadium in Beijing over the summer. I mean, they do these parades like nobody else. We were discussing the Chinese inmates in Chinese prisons the other day and how they learn Michael Jackson dances whilst wearing their yellow jumpsuits. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of fine to watch memes of that on YouTube. But the reality is, like, this is what they're doing to prisoners. Like, forcing them to learn a dance routine. I mean, what is that the equivalent of? I mean, it's pretty bad, isn't it? Isn't it pretty bad? I mean, what if they don't like Michael Jackson? China's nuclear weapons buildup raises the stakes, is the headline. The rivalry with the US was already dangerous, but with more warheads, risks are growing exponentially. And this is the story on the front of the LA Times on this. What day is it today? Is it Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday morning. It says it was already a dangerous race, China versus the United States, each pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into missiles, some submarines, warplanes, and ships. Hi, Stacey. Thank you for saying hello. I loved what you did. I just bit my lips just then. It really hurts. China versus the United States, each pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into missiles, submarines, warplanes, and ships, vying to dominate the Indo-Pacific. Well, that race may now go nuclear, it says. A Pentagon report released this month estimated that China may have 700 nuclear warheads by 2027 and 1,000 by 2030. A dramatic increase from last year's assessment that China's 200 or so warheads would only double over the next decade. And the Pentagon noted that China's nuclear delivery platforms and supporting infrastructure indicate it may already possess a nuclear triad capable of launching missiles from the air, ground, and sea. I mean, you know, this is why nuclear proliferation, disarmament, is so essential, right? Because how did we get to a point on this planet where countries have nukes? What is the only purpose to use nukes? To threaten other countries. It's not to shoot meteorites out of the sky that might be coming towards Earth. I mean, that's the stuff of science fiction. So why have nukes? I mean, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about this because I haven't given it thought for several years. But I would say that I would like the superpowers, including America, to be the first to disarm. Can you imagine America ever doing that? Going, you know something, China and Russia? We're getting rid of our nukes. Do you think that could ever happen? Think we'd ever get a president who would be the first to say, right, if we do it, you got to do it. We'll sign a pact. We do it first. You do it second. You do it third. Think Putin, think Xi Jinping would join in on that? It's really hard to say, isn't it? Stacey says it's because nuclear weapons are awesome to China. Well, they're kind of awesome to America as well, aren't they? And awesome to Russia. I kind of feel like... I mean, I blame men for a lot of this. You know? It's always men. Men and big guns. Let's just say hypothetically that China was run by a female and Russia was run by a female and America was run by a female. Do you think they would be so kind of gung-ho about having the biggest warheads? Who's got the biggest warheads? Do you think the female mind might be less aggressive about this whole thing. I've often thought about this because, during the pandemic, I was thinking, during the pandemic is still going on and arguably increasing. But the countries that had female leaders were doing a lot better, right? And that occurred to me. I was thinking, well, would it be the same with nuclear disarmament? Just a thought, something to think about, isn't it? So this is the big story in the front of the LA Times this morning, whether China's nuclear weapon buildup raises the stakes. Also, blowing a whistle or throwing a grenade on medical board is the headline. Regulator says colleagues have let bad doctors off easy. Yes, the pleas for help find him. They arrive by email or seep into his social media account. One showed up in a tightly sealed letter to his home after years of feeling ignored by the Medical Board of California. The writers hope he'll finally be the one who hears them. This is Eric T.J. Watkins can guess the types of allegations that could be waiting inside, the stories of a doctor's misconduct that left an overprescribed teen addicted, a father missing a limb, and a daughter dead. So this is the regulator who is being criticized of letting bad doctors off easy. It's a big thing in this country, I still don't understand the qualifications required to be a doctor. Because, we have a thing here called urgent care, right, which can be a privately run medical facility. And it's not connected to a hospital, and it's private. And so they employ doctors. And you go to urgent care, and you never really know, how qualified that doctor is. Because I've been seen by people who turn out to be, medical technicians, doctor's assistants, nurse practitioners. It's is there a standard at which a doctor requires training in order to say that they're a doctor? Because they love to use the word doctor, don't they? I mean, look at Rand Paul. He when he's announced, he's always Dr. Rand Paul, and that gives him status. But the guy's an orthodontist. It's very interesting to me. Because where I'm from, if you're an orthodontist, you would never use the word doctor ahead of your name. You just wouldn't do it. It's it's a little bit too... It's a bit pony, as we would say. It's a little bit pony. Okay, let's take a look at what else we have here. Progressive Democrats test drive hardball tactics. It says, Progressive Democrats have never been shy about fighting for what they want, but their aggressive tactics in the recent fight over a massive social safety net package surprised many in their own party, raising questions about whether the tougher stance was an anomaly or a sign of battles to come. And emboldened by Democrats' narrow control of the House and Senate, the 95-member Congressional Progressive Caucus for nearly 2 months delayed a passage of bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure bill, not because they opposed it, but to use as leverage in negotiations with moderates over a separate, larger spending package to address healthcare, childcare, and climate change. It's interesting. I do wish that they wouldn't refer to these individuals in the Democratic Party. They call them a Congressional Progressive Caucus. There's nothing progressive about these people. This is what it really interests me. If you go anywhere else in the world, the things that these people are campaigning for, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her colleagues, it's just not progressive. It's not even normal. It's 20 years ago. So this is why we have to travel. This is why we have to learn about other civilizations and cultures and politics outside of the United States, because then we get a kind of perspective and a barometer. Because otherwise you're going to think that AOC is a progressive, and she's not. She's just normal. The problem is that the people that oppose her, and I'm talking about Democrats, the Democrats are so right-wing, they're so to the right. They're not even centrist or moderate. There's a lot of right-wing Democrats. Look at Kristen Sinema. Look at what's that guy's name? You know the one I mean. Him. From West Virginia. His name just suddenly escaped me, but you know what I'm talking about. So, anyway, let's go back to the newspapers because we've... there's one last story on the LA Times that I wanted to do. Booster rules confuse, so state steps in. We were talking about this in the last couple of days. And that is, with confusion mounting over who is eligible for COVID-19 booster shots, California health officials updated the state's guidelines on Tuesday to say that essentially all adults are recommended to get the additional vaccinations. The move by the California Department of Public Health could be a precursor to federal officials taking similar action by the end of this week. So, I mean, this is very interesting because I know lots of people who don't know whether they should get the booster or not right now because the rules are so flimsy. But it's not just the rules. In fact, I'd say the rules aren't flimsy. It's the execution. And this is the problem of having a private healthcare system try and deal with a pandemic. It's not. A private healthcare system is designed for profit, not for a pandemic. So this is why people don't really know, and this is when I went to the pharmacy to get a booster shot, nobody questioned me and said, are you over 65? No, 37. Are you immunocompromised? Are you working in the front line, like in a health, in a care home or something? They didn't ask me any of those questions, just gave me the booster. Bing. So there's no kind of joined up thinking between the state and health providers because there's no state health providers. It's all just private entities. I mean, when I go for a COVID test at my local walk-in center, one of these urgent care places, I saw the bill for the test that they send to the state or to the federal government, whoever covers it. They charge like $250 to do the test, for the PCR test. And then because I said I felt like I had some symptoms, they then sent a doctor in. And so just the doctor coming in to say to me, how are you feeling? And maybe you should isolate for a few days. That got charged at $350. Just to have the doctor come in and have a very normal chat with me. So the state is effectively paying like nearly $600 for something that should be free. Completely free. And the state is carrying the cost, or hugely subsidized. But this is all profit, because the urgent care will profit, and even my healthcare company that is reimbursing is going to profit. And these organizations have made more money from the pandemic than ever before. I mean, one of the biggest health providers, I think they might be they are the biggest health provider in the US. You'll know who they are. Their profit has gone up 3 times during the pandemic. They've made 3 times more money in the pandemic because they've been able to get access to these federal funds. It's quite something, isn't it? Okay, let's have a little look here. The Wall Street Journal. That's the next one on our list. If you are living somewhere, then tell us what newspaper is your local and I'll review it. Stacy says Signal Health Springs charge you absolutely nothing. Oh, Max says Joe Manchin. Thank you. Yes, it is Joe Manchin. Well, Signal Health Springs, they probably don't charge you anything. I mean, I didn't get charged for my COVID test. But that doesn't mean that no one's paying for it. That means you're still paying for it because the government is paying for it, and the government uses our money, our tax dollars. So, yeah, we're being charged full price. We're just not paying directly for it. We're indirectly paying for it. Hi to Grieg in California. KL is in Texas. Max is in Virginia. Stacey's in Texas. Lots of people joining us on Backchannel this morning. I'm Anthony Davis. We're looking through the morning papers, about to do the Wall Street Journal. And if you have a local newspaper that you would like me to review, then I'm very happy to do that. Just let me know what it is, either by talking to your device, say the activation word, followed by say, and then your message, or you can message us via the web chat, which is at backchannel.tv. Wall Street Journal leads with Shiites warily accept Taliban rule 20 years after killings. Yes, says a somber sight. It's a photograph of Saeed Kazim standing by the graves of his relatives who were killed by the Taliban in January 2001 at a mass execution of Hazara people in Afghanistan. Today, Shiites have cautiously allied with the Taliban. And I mean, it's a tragic story, isn't it? I don't like to kind of go over old ground, but I wonder if Afghanistan would have been better off if Western forces had never gone in the first place. Do you think like where they're at now would be better or worse? Would still be Taliban rule, but would they have infrastructure because there wouldn't have been these massive bombing campaigns? Would they have water, clean water, running through pipes? Would they have school buildings? Had we, and I say we, allied forces, the British, the Americans, everybody, they all went in and bombed the hell out of Afghanistan. So if it had never happened, would they be in a better position now that we have retreated and lost the war? We lost the war. Also on the front of the Wall Street Journal, shoppers increase spending despite inflation. This is actually a good news story. They're few and far between in the newspapers, aren't they? US consumers withstood rising inflation to power a burst of shopping ahead of the holiday season, with big retailers reporting higher sales and expectations for a solid finish for the year. Sales at US retail stores, online sellers and restaurants rose in October by a seasonally adjusted 1.7% from the previous month, and the Commerce Department said that consumers continued their stepped-up spending despite continued COVID-19 fears and inflation concerns. I mean, I actually think that so many people have been indoors for 2 years and saved disposable income that they otherwise would have spent on just stuff, treats and gifts and going out, that people have actually, not all people, obviously, a lot of people lost their jobs, but the people that were able to continue working or work from home or have their own businesses or whatever, they've now got disposable income that they're spending that they didn't spend during the lockdown. And so I do think that this Christmas, it's probably going to be a bumper Christmas, despite the shortage of goods, this kind of supply chain issues that we've got, stuff coming in from China and this shortage of workers and microchips and all of these supply chain problems that we've talked about so often. Pfizer seeks approval of virus pill. Yes, Pfizer said it has asked the US health regulator to authorize its oral COVID-19 drug for use in high-risk patients, putting the pill on a path that could make it available for people to take it at home by the end of the year. Clearance from the US Food and Drug Administration would give patients and doctors an easy-to-use treatment to keep people out of the hospital early in the course of the disease. Isn't that great? I mean, I really feel like the development of drugs now is going to contribute to the end of the pandemic, and it will end up being just like having the flu, getting a flu shot. But interestingly, a lot of the people, including my landlord, who I was talking to about this yesterday, he will not get vaccinated. He had COVID recently, and he recovered from it, and he is convinced that he doesn't need to get vaccinated because he thinks that it's going to force him to vote Democrat because there's like a microchip in it. And I said to him, do you get a flu shot? And he's like, no, of course I don't get a flu shot. So I believe that the same people that don't want to get vaccinated are also the people that don't want to take flu shots. I think it's people that I feel in some way that the authorities are suspect and they're not to be trusted. And I'm reading books at the moment, very interested in what happened in society that caused a percentage of the populations of all countries to have so much distrust for the authorities when it comes to things like vaccinations. It's happened over years and decades. I mean, in America, of course, there was all the testing on black people for polio and other diseases that when they were testing vaccines. And so the black community are distrusting of white people with needles. That's the reality. And that's why there's this huge campaign here to encourage the black community to get vaccinated. A lot of them don't want to. And it goes back to decades and decades. It started in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. The testing by white doctors on black people. And so this is something that is exclusive to America in this way. And so this is why there is this fear. And it's very serious. But, numbers are definitely increasing because, more than 80% of the United States is now vaccinated from COVID-19 or for COVID-19, against COVID-19. 80%. And that's a pretty good percentage. But I'd be very interested to see what the statistics would be on ethnic minority groups in that 20%. What percentage of those that are unvaccinated are African American, Latino? It would just be very interesting to know what the difference is. Maybe you know. Maybe you can tell me. Just talk to your device. That's right. The syphilis testing started in the 1930s, didn't it? Yeah, they tested. It was a whole campaign and program to test the effects of syphilis to prevent an outbreak, and they used black candidates. You know, that was. I mean, it's beggars belief, isn't it? Like, you can't imagine what that must have been like, and yet here we are. 90 years later almost, right? And the effects of that are still causing people to be reluctant to get vaccinated because of a distrust. It goes back so far. Activision CEO knew for years of sexual misconduct claims. This is Bobby Kotick. Didn't inform board of some reports, including alleged rapes. That's on the front of the LA Times as well. Fannie, Freddie set to back mortgages near $1 million. The federal government is about to back mortgages of nearly $1 million for the first time. The maximum size of home mortgage loans eligible for backing by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are expected to jump sharply in 2022, a reflection of the rapid appreciation in home prices nationally over the past year. That's not a good story. We do not want house prices to go up. People can't afford houses. You know, we want house prices to go down. Hi, Davey. Thank you for joining us. Dave says baby. Is that a place? I don't know that that's a place. Maybe it misheard you. Davey, let me know where you're from. Just tell your device, use the activation word followed by say, then your message. Also, Dylan is with us as well. Thank you, Dylan. Nice to know that you're part of the show again. You were with us yesterday. And Dylan's saying today that he's in Nairobi. Where were you yesterday? I don't know that you've traveled the world that quickly. I don't know. You playing tricks with me? Well, Davey, baby, your secret's safe with me. Davey, baby, I love it. Iran boosts nuclear effort, diplomats say. Iran has resumed production of equipment for advanced centrifuges at a site the United Nations Atomic Energy Agency has been unable to monitor or gain access to for months. Diplomats familiar with the activities say, which presents a new challenge for the Biden administration, as if they needed any more new challenges to deal with. There's a lot going on at the moment, you know? Trying to get these bills through, trying to get everyone vaccinated, trying to reduce inflation. There's a lot to deal with. Who wants to deal with all that? But, you know, they're doing their best. You can only do your best, right? If there's a newspaper you would like me to review, then all you have to do is just let me know. Just tell your device or use the web chat at backchannel.tv and let me know which newspaper you're interested in. We're going to jump to the New York Times next and see what's happening there on this Wednesday morning. It's November 17, 9:29 is the time right now, 9:29. Should we try the US News Update at 9:30, Carla? Do you think that would be worth doing? You know, on the half, get the headlines. You tell me when it's ready and I'll introduce it. Can Biden law reverse legacy of racial bias? It says goal for infrastructure relies on the states. Yes, President Biden's $1 trillion plan to rebuild America's infrastructure comes with a built-in promise. No longer will roads, bridges, and railways be instruments of bias or racism. Communities that ended up divided along racial lines will be made whole. I mean, this is how far and wide the infrastructure deal goes. That it's not just about fixing roads, it's about bringing the communities together. You know? It's a big thing. Okay, we're going to do a US News Update now. It's a podcast that I do every day. It's just 2 minutes of US news in case you want to subscribe. Fingers crossed it works, because it's only worked once out of 8 times so far, so, wish us luck. Here it is on Backchannel. It's Wednesday, November 17. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. The Biden administration is making billions of dollars available to drug makers to scale up domestic production of COVID-19 vaccines in the hopes of building capacity to produce an additional 1 billion shots per year to share with the world. Under the new initiative, the Department of Health and Human Services Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority is soliciting pharmaceutical companies that have demonstrated the ability to make the more effective mRNA vaccines to bid for government investment in scaling up their manufacturing abilities. Drug makers Pfizer and Moderna produce the 2 US-approved mRNA shots. The Biden administration believes the boosted capacity of COVID-19 shots will help ease a global shortage of doses, particularly in lower and middle-income nations, stopping preventable death and limiting the development of potentially new, more dangerous variants of the virus. The initiative comes as the Biden White House has faced growing pressure at home and abroad over inequity in the global vaccine supply. Meanwhile, an estimated 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses in 1 year, a never-before-seen milestone that health officials say is tied to the COVID-19 pandemic and a more dangerous drug supply. Overdose deaths have been rising for more than 2 decades, accelerated in the past 2 years, and, according to new data, jumped nearly 30% in the latest year. Experts believe the top drivers are the growing prevalence of deadly fentanyl in the illicit drug supply and the COVID-19 pandemic, which left many drug users socially isolated and unable to get treatment or other support. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo speaker to open Backchannel. It worked. Unbelievable. So if you want to subscribe to the US News Update, it's a podcast. It's 5 days a week, and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. There it is. Now, because Stacey's here and she's in Texas, I thought we'd take a look at the San Antonio Express News. It says program target cybersecurity startups. This is Geekdom and a Wisconsin-based tech accelerator operator and venture capital firm are teaming up to create dozens of San Antonio cybersecurity startups as the city continues to promote itself as a national hub of computer network defense. Isn't that interesting? So that's one of the stories on the front of your local paper, Stacey. COVID numbers up in San Antonio following declines. It says the public health officials there are reporting a rise in the number of newly diagnosed coronavirus cases, while the city's 7-day moving average has reached its highest point in 3 weeks. You see, there's so many people who are like, COVID's over, and it's like, not according to the statistics. We have like an emotional relationship with COVID, and then we have a scientific relationship with COVID. And I think you have to kind of find the balance, obviously, because we don't want to be walking around, masked and gloved and being too anxious about it. We have to kind of get on with our lives. But at the same time, we have to ask, why are the numbers going up? And it's because people are just taking no precautions. And in some states, Texas is one of them, Florida is another, Arizona is these are places where people are just a little bit more, well, they're just not really interested anymore. They're just over it now, just over it. So what's it like where you are? Are people still taking COVID very seriously, or are they just over it? Here in California, it's still a big thing. A friend of mine just went to London and just came back, and I said, what's it like over there? And she said, you wouldn't know that there was still a pandemic. Everybody's in the restaurants and bars and shops. No one's got masks on. It's just like the olden days. I was like, interesting. Numbers are going up there. US-China talks generate little action, but cordial tone promising is also on the front of the San Antonio Express News this morning. So that's how that one looks. And then there was another one that I was going to do. Oh, the Bristol Herald Courier. This is for Max, who's in Virginia, and they lead with 2 Virginia House races headed for recounts. Yes, 2 incumbent Democrats who trail Republican challengers in close races in Virginia's House of Delegates announced on Tuesday they will seek recounts, leaving control of the House in limbo. So that's how that story rolls. Republicans have won 50 seats and Democrats have won 48. So it's very interesting, isn't it? I really get like the feeling that I just love the way that different states are like forging their own path politically these days. You know, it's kind of irrelevant what's happening in the rest of the country, just like forging their own path. Very interesting to me. Second lawsuit filed over healthcare vaccine mandate is another story that we have here. GOP majority, 6th Circuit to weigh Biden vax mandate. Yes, the challenges to President Joe Biden's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for private employers will be consolidated in the U.S. 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, a panel dominated by judges appointed by Republicans. And here we are again, same conversation, never seems to change, that the vaccine has been politicized by the right, and therefore all of their reasoning for trying to refuse mandates is because they're like, this is my right to choose. And the argument from the left is that to be truly free, we need to live in a society without disease. So pick one. You know? It's interesting, isn't it? So let me know where you're at with that if you wish to. I'm just trying to get the producer back on the screen here because, you know, a few things have... I'm like an airline pilot who've got so many screens. I feel like I could literally fly to the moon. Welcome back, Carla. Thank you for returning to the show. I can't really do the show unless her little face is there, you know, just like staring at me and giving me moral support. It's a big part of this. Stacy says, thank you for spending my lunch hour with me. Well, it's my pleasure. And you can have lunch anytime you like, as long as it's between the hours of 9 and 11 Pacific, 12 and 2 Eastern. Any day you like. I could murder some lunch. I've not even had breakfast. Actually, that's not true. I had some leftover apple pie for breakfast. Like Grandma makes. It's the Dutch one, you know, that's got like the crumbles on the top. There's a restaurant nearby called House of Pies. Now, House of Pies was the precursor to IHOP, you know, House of Pancakes. And House of Pies used to be everywhere across the United States. And the last remaining HOP is near Hollywood. And it's a little run down, but it's a family restaurant. You know, it's like a diner, family restaurant. They do the best pies. The best pies. But I think House of Pies became IHOP. And then IHOP obviously became this kind of branded franchise, and House of Pies just gently died. And I'm very interested in kind of history and heritage of retail outlets. So, and if you are too, do like a Wikipedia search on House of Pies, and you'll read the whole story about the demise of House of Pies, which in itself sounds like a strat line, doesn't it? The demise of House of Pies. Max says yummy. Are you saying yummy because of the Dutch apple pie with the crumbles on the top? Ooh, it was delicious. That's all I've had for breakfast this morning. And half a cup of English breakfast tea. I don't know if I told you, I felt a little ill the last 2 days. I had like an upset stomach, and I realized the reason was that I use oat milk in my tea. I don't have dairy. Hi, Stephen. Thanks for joining us. And you can't really tell when oat milk has gone off because it doesn't really smell like, you know, like bad dairy milk. It doesn't smell the same. It curdles a little bit, but I hadn't really noticed. And so I think I'd been drinking bad oat milk for the last 2 days, and that's why I suddenly felt so sick. And even going out last night with my brother for dinner, I was like a few degrees under. I couldn't really eat, and we were in this amazing dining room, and I was like, I just had a baked potato and some broccoli. That's no meal for a growing man. Need some beans, some protein. Notice what I did there? I referred to beans as the protein, and not meat. There's actually no protein in the meat itself. You know that. The protein comes from the cows who are eating the grass. They get their protein from their food. That's how we kind of get our protein, is from the food that the cows eat. So why not just cut out the cow, save the planet, and you can just eat the grass or the grains or whatever it is, you know, that the cow is eating as well. Cut out the middle cow. It's just an idea. I'm not preaching the gospel, just telling you how I do it. You can do whatever you like. Ash, thank you for joining us. Ash is in Arizona. Stacy says beans and meats together are closings. Is that what you meant to say? Closings? That might be a miscommunication through the device. But so maybe send that message again and maybe it'll come through slightly differently. That's it. We've just finished looking at the Bristol Herald Courier from Southwest Virginia through to Northwest Tennessee, or Northeast Tennessee. So that's that paper. All right, let's go back to our running order and see where we're at, because, you know, so much is going on this morning, and I'm being, like, pulled from pillar to post. Ash, hi. Stephen, hi. Dylan, hi. Davey, hi. Grieg, hi. Stacy, hi. Max, everybody. You and me, I feel like this is becoming a bit of a thing. You know? Don't you feel that? Is this becoming a thing? Every day? Suits me. Love it. It's 9:42. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. It's the Anthony Davis Show. Oh, it's over this side. It's the Anthony Davis Show. I need to, like, come in from this way, don't I? It's the Anthony Davis Show. See what I did there? It's the Anthony Davis Show. And Carla liked that. Nobody else, but Carla did. It's the Anthony Davis Show. And you can find me here Monday through Friday between 9 and 11 Pacific. And that's 12 and 2 Eastern. And wherever you're at, you know. Oh, proteins. Beans and meat together are proteins. Yeah, but beans on their own are proteins. And meat on their own is protein. And, you know, you can get your protein from a chickpea. You can get your protein from a... Where else? You can get it from a bacon sandwich. It's interesting, isn't it? Get it from... There's actually arguably more protein in vegetables than there is in meat. Max says, I like it. What, you like the fact that we're hanging out every morning, Max? I like it too. It's like life-changing. The New York Times is where we're heading now. We're going to the East Coast and taking a look at the front page. We were about to do that just before we went to the US News Update. Can Biden law reverse legacy of racial bias was the story that we were looking at. Also, Americans dread rising inflation but spend freely. American consumers are dour about the economy, worried about inflation and pessimistic about the direction of the country in general. But none of that is keeping them from spending. Retail sales set a record in October before adjusting for inflation as shoppers splurged on electronics and home improvement projects. Major retailers like Walmart are posting strong profits. Although saying that, I think the share price of Walmart dropped yesterday. Suddenly. So that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder why. Wall Street forecasters are predicting a holiday season that looks less like pandemic-constrained 2020 than 2019, when a strong labor market powered robust sales. So that's good news, isn't it? You know, I have mixed emotions about this because we were talking the other day about Biden talking to the major retailers, telling them to make sure that the shelves are stocked for the holiday season. But the thing that annoyed me about that was that he'd come straight from the Glasgow Climate Conference. And I really feel like the speech he made at the climate conference about, you know, us being more conscious, not being so wasteful and all that stuff, completely contradicted his decision to insist that Target put more Chinese plastic products on the shelves for children to buy this Christmas. And this falls into the whole kind of freedom and liberty conversation, doesn't it? You know, at what point are we at a cutoff where we're like, okay, it's not really fair for the government to tell us how to enjoy or not enjoy our Christmas? But Greta Thunberg's point that she made when she's talking about the blah, 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 is that we need to make so many more sacrifices. And that's because you see the regular people who have regular carbon-sized footprints, they say, well, I want to see what industry are doing. What's this world doing? How industry is putting out so many more emissions than I am? And I'm like, yeah, but like if you go first, then they might follow. It's a little bit like nuclear disarmament. We were saying earlier, could America ever disarm in the hope that Russia and China do if they make a pact? So like, are you prepared to sacrifice all of your luxuries in favor of leading the charge in terms of climate emissions reduction? I just think we have to take responsibility. All of us, a little bit, just a little bit. If we all do a little bit, then that equals a whole load. If you've seen this show a bit now, you're probably getting you're getting into the rhythm of the kind of stuff that I feel passionate about. Collective responsibility. This is who I am. Like, I can't pretend I'm somebody else. Gone are the days where you were like a presenter. Do you remember those days when you had to be a presenter? And whatever they made you say is what you said, and you said it with conviction. The world is too damaged now to be that person. Like, you have to stand by your views. I have to stand by my views. Unfortunately, we're talking on an unregulated platform. This is not television. This is a free forum. I don't swear, but if I wanted to, it's completely allowed in a forum like this. This is what the internet has afforded us, the opportunity to be ourselves. Whereas I grew up working in television and radio that was heavily regulated. So not only could you not swear, but you couldn't have an opinion. Or if you did have an opinion, you had to make sure there was someone standing next to you that had an opposing opinion to ensure that it was balanced. But the internet is not like that, is it? My landlord sent me a video yesterday because he has very different views to me about how the whole pandemic is bio-warfare and a conspiracy. And I was like, okay. But that's what he's into. Not me. I'm living in reality. It's 12 minutes to 10. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. And thank you for joining us. Carla has her head in her hands. She's just like, really? This is the show? I'm like, yeah, this is the show. If you've ever watched You've Got That Straight Like an Arrow, says Stacey. Thank you. I have got that straight like an arrow. Which bit are you referring to, though? Interesting. Hi, Stephen. Welcome back. Stephen's in Minnesota. I think he joined us yesterday or the day before. Nice to know you're returning. Angry and out of options on the front of the New York Times this morning in Belarus. He spent 28 nights, each colder than the one the night before, choking on campfire smoke and despair on Europe's doorstep. He made it across the razor wire to Poland 3 times, only to be grabbed in the forest and forced back to Belarus. His visa for Belarus expired 12 days ago, leaving him at the mercy of a repressive police state. On Tuesday, Rawand Akram, a 23-year-old Kurd from Iraq, snapped. He and hundreds of other desperate and increasingly angry migrants marooned at the border and egged on, he said, by the Belarusian security officials, stampeded towards a frontier checkpoint, hurling stones and debris at Polish security forces massed just a few yards away. What began around noon as just another attempt to breach the border fence spiraled into a dangerous melee, and Polish officers responded with volleys from water cannon and blasts of tear gas. See, while we're comfortable here planning for the holidays, you don't want to be on the Polish-Belarusian border. It's just tragic there now. It's just tragic. Biden's talks with Xi calm rising tension, it says. The virtual meeting between President Biden and China's leader, Xi Jinping, produced no breakthroughs in a relationship that has spiraled dangerously downward. That was not the intent. Instead, the two leaders sought to keep the many disputes between the two countries from escalating into a broader conflict. If they can translate their words into a kind of detente, Is that how you say it? Or détente? Détente. Maybe it's détente. It would count as a diplomatic success. So there we go. That's the New York Times for you this morning. In Times Square on New Year's, plan to be cold and vaccinated. Yes, that's right. If you want to join the New Year's parade, all the activities that happen in Times Square on New Year, then you're going to have to prove your vaccination. Everywhere's doing this now. The restaurant I went to last night, they want to see your vaccination card. I think the electronic method of showing the card is the better thing, because my card now I got my first shot in March, so my card now is, it's coming on for like 10 months old, and it's looking a little worse for wear, because it's been in my wallet, in my back pocket, so I basically sit on it the whole time. Could really do with a fresh version of that. So there we go, that's the New York Times. Let's go back to our running order and see where we're at in this program. The Arizona Daily Star is next. Let's take a look at that. We're whizzing through the morning papers. We'll have them done by 10 o'clock, and then we're going to get into some slightly deeper conversations about some of the stories that have presented themselves in the news this morning. And if you'd like to join in, well, you can chat to me. Just talk to your Echo device in the usual way. Say the activation word, the wake-up word, followed by the magic word, which is say, and then your message. Or you can use the web chat at backchannel.tv. If you're watching the stream on YouTube, you can do that too on a big TV. If you want to see me in 60 inches, then be my guest. All you have to do is go to YouTube, search Anthony Davis Backchannel or Backchannel Anthony Davis, and then it'll just come up. And you can join the live stream. You can message me from there as well. So that's how it goes. That's how you do it. And that's what Backchannel's all about. 9:52 is the time. Arizona Daily Star. Spending soars, adding to supply chain crunch. Yes, it says take a step back from the picked-over store shelves, the stalled container ships, and the empty auto showrooms, and you'll find a root cause of the shortages of just about everything. Even as the pandemic has dragged on, U.S. households flush with cash from stimulus checks, booming stock markets, and enlarged home equity have felt like spending freely again. I don't know that this is true. Let me tell you this. I think there's a political bias to this story, and it is in the Arizona Daily Star. So there probably is. But if you just think about that for a second, they're claiming that people are spending more because of the booming stock market. Well, you have to sell your shares in order to take advantage of the booming stock market, right? And there hasn't been many sell-offs. They're saying that people's stimulus checks, well, those stimulus checks were for people who lost their jobs, right? So the money's not coming from stimulus checks. People were using stimulus money, which was not very much, to pay for food and pay their rent and, basics. And also, what was the final thing they said? Booming stock markets. Oh, enlarged home equity. Well, you have to sell your house to take advantage of any home equity or remortgage. And that's not been happening. So I'm not convinced that this story, I understand the story that, people are going out and spending, but I don't think it's from the three reasons that the Arizona Daily Star gives. That's my view. It says, since consumer demand drives much of the US and global economies, high demand has brought goods shortages to the US and much of the world. Add the fact that companies are ordering and hoarding more goods and parts than they need, so they don't run out, and you end up with an almost unquenchable demand that is magnifying the supply shortages. And that's where a big problem comes in. Suppliers were caught so flat-footed by how fast pent-up spending surged out of the recession that they won't likely be able to catch up as long as demand remains so robust. And that's especially because Americans still hunkered down at home more than they did before the pandemic, continued to spend more on goods, electronics, furniture, appliances, sporting goods than on services like hotels, meals out, and movie tickets. And all that demand for goods, in turn, is helping to accelerate US inflation. There it is. I mean, seeing the kind of container ships and the trucks just like parked up and anchored, full of stuff. It really does like make you think about how far our goods are traveling, doesn't it? And I really wish that retailers, do you think the government could actually like make a point of this? I'm going to kind of lean back a little bit and just recline just a moment for this conversation, because I feel like this is one of those conversations where I need to kind of be in a relaxed place. Would you prefer if there was like a government mandated rule that retailers had to print on the ticket, you know, where it says how much something is, on the price tag, the environmental impact of buying that item? So it would say the price is $29.95. It'll say how many miles the goods have traveled and how many CO2, you know, the CO2 emissions for that for whatever that is. And so you can choose. So if you want to buy a Barbie, I've bought a few Barbies recently. Not for myself, I have a child. If it said that Barbie had traveled 12,000 miles to get to the shelf and its CO2 emissions were, let's say, 250 micrograms, and that was printed on a little green sticker next to the price tag of $29.95, and I looked at an opposing good, something that was like maybe because I was thinking about this about American Girl. You know American Girl? Carla, maybe you can look this up. There's this huge product range in America called American Girl, and it's a fantastic dolls, amazing products. I want to know if they're made in America. It's very important to me to know this because I spent hours in the American Girl store with my daughter. She was looking at dolls. I ended up buying her a koala bear, the thing that was like $25. We were at a party there, so she got given a beautiful doll, which costs around $45, but all the kids were given one. And I was thinking, this whole like American Girl branding, are American Girl dolls made in America? Or are they coming in from China? This is very important to me because I feel like for years we've been made to think that things are made in America. And they're not. Carla, do we have an answer? They're made in China. American Girl dolls are made in China. I rest my case. Every single American Girl doll comes from China. The whole they have hundreds of dolls in the range. Does it say, Carla, when they stopped making American Girl dolls in America? There must have been, because these dolls have been around since like the 20s and 30s. Was there a point at which they switched all of their manufacturing to China? If the American Girl chain was called China Girl, if it was called China Girl, do you think it would be so popular? Got to think about this. Hi, Sean. Sean's in California. Thank you for joining us. It's approaching 10 o'clock. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis, talking about the American Girl dolls, which I just got my daughter one, and this whole the whole American Girl branding was just very potent in this store. It was red, white, and blue, and it was just like, you know, yeah, stars and stripes. It was very interesting to me, and I was like, I wonder where these dolls are made. Just saying. For years, we've been led to believe that American products are best, and they're everything, and it's not. I would argue that very little is made here. Very little. Hi, Sean. Thank you for saying hi. It's just nice to know that you're hanging out with me. Arizona Daily Star also leads with Pfizer to let others make its COVID pill. Yes, drug maker Pfizer has signed a deal with a UN-backed group to allow other manufacturers to make its experimental COVID-19 pill, a move that could make the treatment available to more than half of the world's population. In a statement issued Tuesday, Pfizer said it would grant a license for the antiviral pill to the Geneva-based Medicines Patent Pool, which would let generic drug companies produce the pill for use in 95 countries, making up about 53% of the world's population. And the deal excludes some large countries that have suffered devastating coronavirus outbreaks. For example, while a Brazilian drug company could get a license to make the pill for export to other countries, the medicine could not be made generically for use in Brazil. So, there it is. That's how the Arizona Daily Star is skewing its news this morning. Biden touts infrastructure plans, it says, fighting sagging poll ratings. President Joe Biden sets out on Tuesday on a national tour to persuade everyday Americans of the benefits of his big, just-signed infrastructure plan. First stop, a snowy, rusty bridge in New Hampshire, a state that gave him no love in last year's presidential primaries. Biden left the state in February 2020 before the polls, and had even closed on his fifth-place primary finish, but he returned as president, eager to talk up the billions in investments in upgrading America's roads, bridges, and transit systems that he signed into law on Monday. It's very interesting, because Arizona is very much a right-leaning, a red state. And it's very interesting for me reading these local papers, in this case, the Arizona Daily Star. Just the way they write the language has a bias against Biden. So the first sentence in that headline is fighting sagging poll ratings. President Joe Biden set out on Tuesday on a national tour to persuade everyday Americans of the benefits of his big, just-signed infrastructure plan. So even that sentence has got like 4 biases in it. 4 biases in a really simple sentence. And I think it's important that we learn about how bias creeps into American news reporting. So if you read, well, other countries are regulated. So, in the UK, where I'm from, the newspapers are not regulated the same as the television. So the television has to have a balance, but the newspapers don't. The radio has to have a balance, but the newspapers don't. And so, in England, we kind of get to know which papers take which side. But then, interestingly, some big newspapers where I'm from change sides. And it's normally towards a general election when they kind of pick which candidate on which side that they're going to support. And the paper then just supports that candidate. But in America, it's to me, it's very interesting, the subtle level of bias. Hello, James. James is in California. Nice to hear you, or see you, in fact. So that's how the Arizona Daily Star goes. And do we have anything else on our list here? I think, are we getting to the... we're going to do the Florida Times in just a moment. First, though, I want to remind you that Volley has a growing list of shows here on Backchannel, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning, lots of laughs and their 1-star cinema review, or you can get inspired with Liv Harrison, who loves finding out the secret behind people's success. Or what about the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program Your Pal Hal directly follows this show at 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 2 p.m. Eastern. Okay, Florida Times Union is the one I promised, and this is the last of our newspaper review before we jump into some of these stories in a bit more depth. They lead with lawmaker quick on vaccine fight. Florida's Republican-controlled legislature pushed ahead on Tuesday with efforts to blunt President Biden's vaccine requirements for businesses amid a growing host of questions about risks attached to the move. The House and Senate are poised for final votes on 4 bills sought by Governor Ron DeSantis that defy the Democratic president and support the governor's stands against mask mandates in schools and vaccine requirements on employees of local governments. And while the special session called by DeSantis could end as early as Wednesday, with the governor assured of victory, outnumbered Democrats warned about possible consequences of ignoring federal standards and the confusion the measures could bring to Florida workplaces. Stephen, thank you for coming back and joining us from Minnesota. You dropped off for a minute and now you're back in the chat. So if you want to join us, Stephen, you're using an Echo speaker, I guess. So all you have to do is open up Backchannel web chat. Just go to backchannel.tv and you can message me. Very easy to do. Website, backchannel.tv. You put in your name and where you're from, and then you can message me freely without registering. Very clever. It's 5 minutes after 10. It's Wednesday morning. It's November 17. I'm Anthony Davis. This is Backchannel, and we've been looking through the Florida Times-Union. Jury fails to reach verdict after 1 day in the Rittenhouse murder trial. Well, it's not really failing to reach a verdict. It's still deliberating. There's no time limit. You can't say it's failing to reach a verdict. It just hasn't reached a verdict. It's a little bias. The bias is everywhere. The jury at Carl Rittenhouse's murder trial deliberated a full day on Tuesday without reaching a verdict over whether he was the instigator in a night of bloodshed in Kenosha or a concerned citizen who came under attack while trying to protect property. The case went to the anonymous jury after the judge, in an unusual move, allowed Rittenhouse himself to play a minor role in the selection of the final panel of 12 people whose job it was to decide his fate. I mean, I don't know if you saw this. I watched this live. The judge allowed Carl Rittenhouse to put his hand into a tombola-style drum, a raffle drum, and drew numbered slips that determined which of the 18 jurors who'd sat through the case would deliberate and which ones would be alternates. I mean, it's just beggars belief, isn't it? Do you understand how it's really important that we have, like, social norms? James says, is that normal at all? It's not normal. You do not allow the person on trial to choose their jurors. That's not how it works. It was theatre. I mean, this judge loves the camera. He loves it. He knows exactly what he's doing. When his phone goes off and it plays a kind of Trump theme, and when he, like, does that thing where he's like, and he, like, says nothing for 5 minutes. I mean, he came out and said, he was doing one of those deliberation things that he does, and then he went, I'm just going to tell the truth. And I was like I heard this with my own ears. I was watching it with my own eyes. He said it out loud. For like 5 minutes he's doing this. He's like in this weird, like, suspended animation. And then he's like, I'm just going to say the truth. And I was like, wow. Is that the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God? I mean, what is it that you're saying here? What were you going to say if you weren't going to say the truth? The judge, I mean, it should have been a mistrial from the beginning because of the judge. And you guarantee that whatever, because he'll pass sentence, it's up to the jury to decide if Rittenhouse is guilty or not, but the judge ultimately is going to decide the sentence. And he clearly has a bias, so whatever happens with the jury, the judge is going to rule. It's very, very interesting that this is now the state of criminal justice, certainly in Kenosha, and probably elsewhere across the United States. And what's really important is you don't start to think, well, I'm a Republican, and therefore I want a kind of Republican-leaning judge to be my judge if I ever went to court. Like, we don't want to start thinking like that. Oh, I really hope I get a Republican-leaning judge. No. You want to have a neutral judge. Always. You want to have somebody who is neutral. So it doesn't matter what your political leaning is. You can't, like, pray, oh, I really hope I get a left-leaning judge or a right-leaning judge. Like, that is not normal. And yet that's what has now happened. That's what this justice system has become. Judges that are political. A Supreme Court that is political. Where I'm from, the Supreme Court is non-political. Judges are non-political. They are trained to not allow their political persuasion to affect the case. And if there is any sliver of evidence that is shown in the ruling or in any of the judge's behavior that might suggest there is a political view, then the prosecutor or the defense are allowed to flag it. and then the judge will be removed from the case if there's a bias. It's a self-policing system. And so, but that obviously doesn't happen here, because I was watching the prosecution listen to clear bias from the judge, and why the prosecution didn't say, objection, the judge is biased. Couldn't say it. It's against the rules, clearly. Very interesting to me. This is why we have to travel. This is why we have to go and see what the judiciary is like in other places. You know? Nuremberg, for example. Pick your courtroom. Go see what it's like. Go sit in the public gallery. When you go on vacation, go sit in a court. Take the kids. The jury will return Wednesday morning to continue its work. That's this morning. Rittenhouse, 18-year-old now, 17 when he killed these two people, faces life in prison if convicted as charged for using an AR-style semi-automatic rifle to kill two men and wound a third during a night of protests against racial injustice in Kenosha in the summer of 2020. The former police youth cadet is white, as were those he shot. So there we go. That's Wednesday's Florida Times-Union. Okay, that's the newspapers done. It's 12 minutes after 10 Wednesday morning. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to The Anthony Davis Show. There it is. Okay, let's go back and see what we were going to talk about. I thought, oh, that's right. We were going to talk about Ron DeSantis, because we just finished our newspaper review in Florida. So we're kind of asking why we should be kind of keeping an eye on Ron DeSantis. Because, some people are suggesting that he could be a future Republican candidate for president. Hi, Tegan. Thanks for joining us from Tennessee. If you want to chat to me, then just go on a web browser, put in backchannel.tv, and you can message the show that way. Lots of coverage of Ron DeSantis. It says the QAnon shaman who was punished today with one of the harshest prison sentences yet for a Capitol rioter, 33-year-old Jacob Chansley, the 33-year-old guy who notoriously stormed the Capitol on January 6th, with a spear and bullhorn while wearing a horned headpiece made of coyote skin, was sentenced to 41 months in prison after pleading guilty to several charges relating to the riots. And just trying to scroll down and see how this relates to Ron DeSantis in some way, because it's in my Ron DeSantis section. Carla, do we know how this relates to Ron? Is it because... I see. It's because of the happening in the state. Yes. Why was he sentenced in Florida? Is that where he's from? The guy with the horns. That's a good look, though, isn't it? Isn't it interesting how a lot of the people that took part in the insurrection, who kind of, were in there, guns a-blazing, shouting and screaming, the moment that they, went on the stand to be convicted for their crimes, were all, whimpering like a baby. Hi, Sean. Thank you for joining us. Alex, thank you for joining us. Nice to know you're around. Governor Ron DeSantis and the Florida Department of Corrections on Wednesday announced hiring bonuses of up to $5,000 for correctional officer new hires. Yeah. As so many cities and states choose to disrespect, degrade, and defund the work of law enforcement, Ron DeSantis said, we want Florida to continue valuing our men and women of law enforcement today, tomorrow, and for generations to come, said the governor. This year, we've prioritized initiatives to recruit and reward high-quality officers, especially corrections officers, and these new bonuses, effective immediately, will help support public safety positions within the Florida Department of Corrections. Translated, hi, Will. Thank you for joining us. Translated means that if you're working in corrections or in the police department, then you're likely to be supporting me as a Republican, and so I'm going to bribe you with a bonus. Is that what it means? So $3,000 for new hires. That's the bonus for all new correctional officers. And beginning in January, state correctional officers' starting salary will be raised to $38,750. That's a 16% increase. So we're just looking at Ron DeSantis this morning and asking, what it is about him that is kind of keeping him in the press so much. I don't think he's a fan of Donald Trump, you know. I think he really used Donald Trump to his advantage. But I don't think that he's a fan of his. I actually think that he probably really despises him, but it knows that he's a good foot up to getting the Republican nomination. I mean, you could argue that there's a chance that DeSantis will go up against Trump for the nomination. It says here, DeSantis plans to offer 5,000 bonuses to law police officers. Yes, that's right. We just did that story, but now we're looking at a different coverage of it. We're actively working to recruit out-of-state law enforcement, DeSantis told Fox News. Many U.S. cities and government agencies have introduced vaccination mandates for public employees. Resistance among police officers and other first responders has been widely picked up by right-wing media figures and politicians using opposition to COVID public health measures to attack the Biden administration and other Democratic authorities. DeSantis polls strongly among Republican voters in surveys of possible presidential nominees for 2024. He's reached such a position by tightly aligning himself with Donald Trump. You see, I don't think that's true. I actually think that he used Trump to his advantage to become a kind of celebrity politician. But I don't know necessarily whether he kind of aligns with him. I think he's equally dangerous, but I don't know that he's aligned. Last week, video circulated showing the two men deploying similar gestures and rhetorical gambits. Yes, the use of these... use of this. Like other Republican politicians in Trump's shadow, DeSantis has attacked public health measures meant to combat COVID-19, which has killed more than 735,000 people in the U.S., and nearly 59,000 in Florida. He says, we've been able to fight back effectively against mandates imposed by, for example, local governments against police, fire, DeSantis said. I'm just thinking about how controversial I should be right now. Why is it that the police, the emergency services, are more likely to align with the right? And is that across the board, would you say? Sean says, go for it. Why is it that there are more police unions fighting these vaccine mandates? Why is law enforcement, correction officers and frontline police officers, why are they more aligned with the right than with the left? That's my question. And what does that say about policing here in the US? What does that say about it? How are we ever going to improve relations with African Americans? You know, like stopping and searching people for no reason, let alone executing people for no reason. I mean, there's no shortage of stories of police officers shooting black people in the back. There was one guy here in California a couple of years ago who was on his way to his mother's house to see his daughter. And the police caught sight of him and were like, well, he's in a hurry. And they started to chase him. And what does he do? He runs. Because he doesn't want to die. Because he knows how many black people are being executed by the police. So he runs. And of course, what do? They shoot him in the back. Where was he going? He was going to see his daughter at his mum's house. So now there's a little girl without a dad. In the same way that African Americans are scared of the vaccine because of the testing on the black community in the 1930s for syphilis, they're also scared of police officers because they know that they could get murdered. So this is a conversation that we have to have. Max says that the reason that police officers are aligned with the Republican Party is because most police officers are white. Well, most Americans are white, statistically. So, you know, what's the difference here? Is it a white thing? I don't know that it is. I think it's a political thing. I don't think it's about the color of your skin. I think it's cultural and political, and it's systemic. It's systemic racism, and this is what we often never really talk about in any great detail. The difference between being a racist and being systemically racist. So my landlord, for example, who is this, Trump-supporting anti-vaxxer, I really like him. Absolutely no problem. We argue about politics, and we have huge adoration and love for each other. I don't believe anything he says. I don't respect any of his views. But Max says white people are no longer the majority in America. Black and brown people are. I don't think that's true. I think in some states that might be the case. But I think that black and brown people are still very much the minority. Max says that's why white people are afraid. Yet you see, that's not the statistic. White people are afraid because right-wing media have suggested that black and brown people could become the majority, and that's making the white man scared. And that in itself is systemic racism, both from the right-wing media that are telling this garbage and also the people who believe it. Carl, it'd be great to know what the statistics are. I reckon that the ethnic minorities, can I guess? I reckon it's around between 10 and 15%. That's my guess. Yeah. As of 2020, non-Hispanic white Americans are the racial and ethnic majority. What is the percentage? Do we know? So white people are 57% of the population. 57.5% of the population. Yeah. So if you're worried about, it's very interesting, Max saying, white people are afraid. What are you afraid of? Exactly. White people. I do sometimes feel a little embarrassed to be white and male. What probably really needs to happen to kind of deal with this is we need to move on a couple of generations. All the old racists need to die out, and then everybody needs to kind of cross-pollinate, so everybody becomes a kind of mixed race. And then I wonder how much racism would be dispersed or dissipated through, having a more of a mixed race society. Or whether there will always be tribalism. Keith has joined us for this conversation. Thank you, Keith. Nice to know you're part of the conversation this morning. Keith's in Lee. And if you want to join in, then you know how to find us. You can just go to backchannel.tv and chat. Or if you've got an Echo device, then you can, with a screen, an Echo show, just say your wake-up word followed by say, and then your message. So you would say, Echo, say, I'm not a racist. and then that will be communicated to me through the system. That's how it works. So thank you very much for your messages. Please continue to get in touch. Max, Will, Sean, Keith, Alex, all joining us right now. Tegan's with us as well. Stacey's with us as well. So many people. Stephen, James. Very busy. So I'm very grateful for your contribution to this conversation. Just kind of asking, some very interesting questions have been posed by you this morning. Are white Americans scared of non-white Americans becoming the majority? Currently, America is 57% white. Interesting conversation to have. And I was asking why it is that white police officers, and the majority police officers are white, police services throughout the world have struggled to get minority groups to join the police service. That's what they're trying to do. Happens in England all the time, just desperate to bring people in. My friend James, he became a police officer and he got fast-tracked because he looked a little bit Chinese. And he's not. He's Caucasian. But he just, they got a bit, they were like, oh yeah, he's a minority. And they fast-tracked him. Hilarious. So, DeSantis also claimed on a scientific basis, but without offering evidence, that most of the first responders have had COVID and have recovered, so they have strong protection. And so I think that influences their decision on a lot of this, that they have already had it and recovered. Incidentally, infection with COVID does not increase immunity to reinfection, but it does not preclude it either. A recent study found that previously infected people who were then vaccinated were better protected against reinfection than those who did not receive the shot. This is the conversation I had with my landlord yesterday, who doesn't want to get vaccinated. He's like, I've had COVID, I don't need to get vaccinated. I'm like, you still do. He won't do it. Won't do it. He's 72 years of age, fit as a fiddle, but just won't do it. And it's not my business to convince him. You know, it's his life, but I don't want him to die from COVID-19 or him be in hospital on a ventilator. I don't want that. I want him to, I want him to live a happy life. Anyway, we've been asking this morning about Ron DeSantis, an interesting kind of coverage of him, and why should the rest of America be keeping an eye on what he's up to, and are his intentions honorable? Or is he just making stuff up about the coronavirus? I mean, it's very interesting to me how he would go against a federal vaccine mandate. He's not giving a reason. He just wants to own the libs. That's all it is. Just wants to own the libs. It's a very political situation. Why would you? I don't know. It just makes no sense to me. Okay, big story happening right now in the US also is the House voting on censoring Paul Gosar over this violent video aimed at OAC. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You may have heard about this story. It's had quite a lot of coverage, and I think the House is doing... When is the House doing the vote? Today? Yeah, that's right. Voting on this resolution to censure Republican Congressman Paul Gosar for posting an animated video on social media that showed him killing New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and preparing to attack Joe Biden. This is a congressman. This is an actual congressman posting a video. I've spoken a lot about what we should accept as normal, when social norms just fall by the wayside. What are we left with? If our elected representatives can't behave in a certain manner, then what are we left with? Max says, I'm surprised he's not a judge. Right, in Kenosha. Lawmakers are also likely to consider an amendment to remove Mr. Gosar from the House Oversight and Reform Committee and the House Natural Resources Committee. He's part of the Oversight Committee along with Miss Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, the fact that this guy's allowed on any committees at all. Have you noticed, nobody ever resigns, gets expelled, gets removed from the party? The only person they're, threatening that with is Representative Liz Cheney. Because she's investigating the January 6th insurrection. She's a Republican, of course, the daughter of Dick Cheney. And the Republican Party, the local Republican Party, it wants to throw her out. Because she wants to get to the bottom of how democracy nearly fell in a coup here in the United States. And they're like, nope. That's just not Republican. Do you feel it? Do you see it? Or do you just choose to ignore it? The House Rules Committee on Tuesday voted 9-4 along party lines. Oh, Boney, thank you for joining us. I'm Anthony. This is Backchannel. If you want to join in on the web chat, just go to backchannel.tv. And you can type your message to me and we can talk. It's 10:30. It's the 17th of November. This is Backchannel. And we're discussing the Representative Paul Gosar, who posted this animated video on social media of him killing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who he sits alongside with on the Oversight Committee. I mean, this is only going to get worse. Like, it's not, you get rid of this guy, it's not going to change anything. You've still got, like, Marjorie Taylor Wood. Is that her name? Hi, Marina. Thank you for joining the thread this morning. Nice to know that you're part of the chat. You've effectively got, like, the extremists. Because, you know, the right can be the right and the left can be the left. But all of a sudden, the extreme right, what used to be called the far right, has now become part of the right. It's all become one thing. So, are you aware that, like, extremist views, like posting a video of you killing another person in Congress, are you aware that that is a far right activity? Like, that behavior is far right behavior. It's not right behavior, right-wing behavior. It's far right. It's excessive violence, which is associated with the far right. Anyway, it's a 90-second long altered clip from the opening credits of the anime Attack on Titan, animated characters whose faces have been replaced with Mr. Gosar and fellow Republicans Marjorie Taylor Greene, not Wood. I was thinking of that film director. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Lauren Boebert of Colorado are seen fighting other animated characters. The face of Miss Ocasio-Cortez is superimposed on a Titan that is killed by Mr. Gosar's character, who also attacks a character with Mr. Biden's face. And the video was flagged by Twitter for violating the platform's rules about hateful conduct, was not meant to depict any harm or violence against anyone portrayed in the anime, he said in a statement on the 9th of November. This video is truly a symbolic portrayal of a fight over immigration policy. Although he took down the video following a backlash, he's not yet apologized. Do you remember when Donald Trump posted a video of him in a ring? Was it with Hillary Clinton, where he was like a boxing guy and he had his face superimposed over a boxer and he basically threw the other person over the side of the ring and then jumped on them and started attacking them? What was that other person? Hillary Clinton? I think it might have been. And there was barely a whisper of a scandal about that. And, you know, he's not even a congressman or a senator. He was the president. Do you remember that? Max, welcome back, in Virginia. Will's in California. Marina's in California. Steven's in Minnesota. Sean's in California. Boney, I don't know where you are. And Alex is in California. Thank you for joining us here on the chat this morning. It's 10:33. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. In the wake of the incident, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez said that threatening images like the one Mr. Gosar tweeted meant that members, like her, had to raise more money for security. It's not just about me. This is that if any member of Congress or Congress's life is threatened, they have to fundraise for their own safety. I mean, it's ludicrous, she says. Are you aware of it? I wasn't aware of this. If representatives want to have security, they have to fundraise for it. The security for congressional representatives is not paid for by the state. When did that happen? She also criticized House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's unwillingness to properly admonish Mr. Gosar. She said Representative McCarthy is not skittish, he is encouraging of this behavior, adding that he encouraged the behavior when the then Representative Ted Yoho called her a effing something last year. Mr. McCarthy told reporters that Mr. Gosar hadn't seen it before it was posted. It was not his intent to show any harm. There's no rules. These people make it up as they go along. It's like, it's whatever they want. They can be as violent, they can be as critical, they can be as lewd, they can be as vile as they want, as extreme as they want. Can you imagine if it was the other way around? If Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a Hispanic female from the Bronx, posted a video of her violently killing and attacking Trump or the leader of the Republicans, Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell or any of these people, if she posted it as a female, I mean, if you were to watch some of the right-wing news channels, as I do, they treat her like such a third-rate citizen, the way they talk about her, the language that they use to demean her, let alone as a minority woman. They criticize her accent because she's got this, like, you know, New Yorkie accent. It's vile. But if she did anything that was on this kind of level about the others, they would call for her head. They absolutely would. And yet this way round, no big deal. No big deal. What's it come to? Like, and I keep going back to this conversation about social norms. Like, what is normal? Because the thing is, I remember we had a thing in England about 20 years ago. How long ago was the Jamie Bolger killing? Was it like 20 years ago? And it was the first time a child had murdered another child. And it was a landmark case, and I remember reporting on it at the time and referencing it over the years later. I think it happened in like the late 90s, was it? 1993, okay, early 90s. Now, this was the first time where I'm from in England that a child killed another child. It never happened before. And so it was a huge story for obvious reasons. And then there were more child-on-child killings. They started to happen. And I was like, in my head, I was like, when did this become normal? Like, it has now become normalized. It only has to happen once for it to become normalized. If it happens more than once, then it just becomes part of the vernacular. But until it happens once, it's abnormal. And I remember that case, the killing of this child, Jamie Bolger. Because, of course, the kid who did it went to prison, and I can't remember how that ended up, but he obviously became an adult. You know, he couldn't be imprisoned initially because he was a child. And that was why it was such a big story. How do you punish a child who kills a child? But now, of course, child murder is happening all over the place. I mean, here in America, it's happening in schools. Mass murder, children killing children. But there was a time when that had never happened. And so my point to you is, like, when do these atrocities become normal? How do they become normalized? They just need to happen once. And tragically, like, things need to happen for change to happen. Well, there was a big fire in London in the 1980s in a big station. And it was caused by, it was famously called the King's Cross Fire. And it happened in the 1980s. And it was caused because escalators in those days used to be made of wood. And because of this fire that happened in the electrical bay of the escalator that caused the wooden escalator to catch fire, they outlawed wooden escalators, like that week. No more wooden escalators. And it's a shame because they were beautiful. You know, they were hand carved and they were beautiful. Well, they probably weren't hand carved; they were machine carved. But they looked like works of art. You looked like you were walking on a piece of sculpture. Anyway, one catches fire. A lot of people died. They banned wooden escalators. All the wooden escalators out, in with the steel escalators. So sometimes a tragedy causes or brings about change, right? For the better. So escalators don't catch fire now because they're not flammable. So the problem and the reason I'm making this point is, like, how do we get to a point in society where something only has to happen once for change to happen? So you could argue that in America, the first school shooting, a child killing other children with a weapon, should have been the moment at which they banned all firearms that could potentially end up in the hands of children. Hi, Melody. Thank you for joining us. Melody's in California. Why does it have to keep happening And maybe it works conversely as well, because maybe once you've had like multiple shootings, then it becomes so part of the norm that they'll never bring about legislation to make a change. Unless you bring about the legislation after the first thing, the fire on the wooden escalator. Unless you bring it about immediately, the likelihood of legislation coming about later on, over time is just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I would argue that there will never be like a gun control to prevent school shootings. It'll just never happen. It's too far gone. Too many shootings now. They've become part of norm society, unless of course you happen to be the parent of a child or a friend of a child or a sibling of a child, that it dies in that way. Hi, Rowan. Thank you for joining us in California as well. You're listening to Anthony Davis on The Anthony Davis Show here on Backchannel. And if you would like to talk to us, then you just go to the web chat, open a web page to backchannel.tv, and then you can type and communicate. If you're listening on an Echo Show device, which is one of those little speakers with a screen on it, a video screen, you can watch this show. You actually see me sitting here having these conversations with you, and you only have to talk to your device in order for your message to come through to me here in the studio. So you would simply say the words, the activation word, whether it be echo or the default words, to wake up your device. Then you say the word say, followed by your message. That's how it works. So thank you for joining us. If you don't have an Echo Show device and you want to see this visual beauty that is the Anthony Davis Show, then just go to YouTube, search Anthony Davis Backchannel, and you'll get that message. You'll get that video feed. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. So many people messaging the show. Rowan, Melody, Max, Marina, Boney, Stephen, Keith, Stacy, Will, Alex, Sean, Tegan, James. I mean, I'm becoming like a popular thing here. This is becoming a thing. And I so love the fact that so many of you seem to come back day after day. Because it's Wednesday now, so this is our 8th show here on Backchannel. Carla, this is our 8th show. Right? That's 16 hours of this program that is currently available to listen to if you want to, if you miss me, if it's later in the day and you miss the show and you want to rewatch it, you can just go to YouTube and you can rewatch the show or re-listen to the show. What's very lucky? Chinese people. Oh, yes, of course, that's right. In Chinese, Carla's telling me that in Chinese culture, the number 8, this is our 8th show, is a lucky number. So this is a very lucky show. Some people might say, I was very lucky to get this job. Right? Very lucky show. Look at the difference in the light on my face when I turn off the iPad. See that? iPad off, iPad on. It like fills in all the lighting here. Remind me to keep it on. It's like a little bit of bottom fill. When you get to this age, 37, it's very nice to get a little bit of bottom fill. iPad off. A little darkness. Anything could be happening in this area. I'm not a vain person. It's interesting, if you're not a vain person like me, because I don't have hair, so I don't need to look in the mirror to see how my hair's looking. I can sometimes, a couple of things happen to me recently. I sometimes go out with toothpaste all around my face because I am so not used to looking in the mirror because I don't have to do my hair, that I can go out and come back and have like a massive toothpaste mustache and be like, oh, not again. So the other day, I had a spot on this side, I think, here, a little zit, and I made the mistake of giving it a squeeze and it bled. And because I don't look in the mirror very often, I dabbed it and it was fine. And then I went out to the store and did a bit of shopping, a bit of groceries. I think I went to the UPS store and I popped in and did something. Anyway, I did like 3 visits. And people were looking at me like a little strange. And I didn't really twig till I got home and I looked in the mirror. That tiny little spot that I'd given a squeeze had bled over the entire half of my face during the morning and dried. So it was like a strawberry birthmark. I had an entire face of dry blood. And because I never look in the mirror, I never noticed. And these poor people in these stores were having to interact with me, looking like looking like some kind of road traffic accident victim. They were thinking, like, shouldn't you be at urgent care? I mean, why are you here buying groceries? I was like, oh, not again. I think I also had toothpaste around my mouth. So I had like a blood face and toothpaste lips. Gorgeous, eh? This is the downside to being a follically challenged individual. So, what do you think? We were talking about this congressman, who posted this video of him killing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I'm asking if the far-right congressman should be arrested, should he be removed, should the case be dropped, and he's allowed freedom of expression? Like, how far does it go? If you're an elected representative, surely there has to be some standards. Do you know what I mean? Surely there has to be a point at which you're like, I can't do stuff like that. Try asking Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's video of Marjorie Taylor Greene during the insurrection when she was locked in that room, with a bunch of other congressmen and women. She was having such a great time in there. She genuinely was enjoying the fact that the insurrection was taking place. Laughing, loving it she was. Checking her social media, loving it. 5 people died that day. They threatened to hang Mike Pence and kill Nancy Pelosi. Interesting, isn't it? So it seems like Kevin McCarthy is just going to let Paul Gosar get away with this video depicting the murder of AOC. It's just another day for them, just another day. There's a final story that we're going to look at this afternoon, or this morning. It's still this morning here on the West Coast. This afternoon on the East Coast, if you are joining us from the East Coast, so many people are, but it's currently 1:47 in the afternoon, 10:47 here in California. And so if you want to be part of the show, then you're very welcome to chat using our chat facility. All you have to do is go to backchannel.tv. We were looking at the New York Times story earlier about while some people are back in the office, others are still in their pajamas. So I thought we'd look at this story again and ask a few questions of you and where you're currently working right now, whether hybrid working is working for you. It says, for months, the putt-putt course sat unused. The beanbag chairs lay empty. The kitchen whiteboard above where the keg used to live displayed in fading marker beers on tap from a happy hour of March 2020. But on a recent weekday, over in the common area was a sign of life. Fresh bagels. Oh, I could eat a fresh bagel right now. I wonder if I have a solitary bagel left in my refrigerator. Always refrigerate your bagels, by the way. A little tip from one who's addicted. It says here, as employees at the financial technology startup Common Bond got COVID vaccines and grew stir-crazy in their apartments, they started trickling back into the office. They say, we call it Work from Work Wednesday. That's so cool, isn't it? Work from Work Wednesday, said Karen Koch, who runs human resources at the company, which has 15,000 square feet of sunlit Soho real estate in New York. So I was just interested whether you are tired of working at home, whether you're going back into the office, if the hybrid model is here to stay. Has your company adopted a hybrid model for working? And how is hybrid working different to working from home? Kathy, thank you for joining us from South Africa. I'd love to know how you found out about Backchannel if you're in South Africa. I'd love to know what you can see, what you can hear, and if you're enjoying us this morning. It's we've got another 5 minutes of me, and then your pal Hal will be here on Backchannel. So yeah, we're just asking the question, are you still working from home? I mean, I love working from home. I have no desire to go into an office ever again. I never enjoyed working in an office when I used to. I mean, I used to be on the radio, and so I would have to go into the office momentarily before going into the studio. But after a period of time, and Carla will know what I'm talking about here, as producer Carla is part of this program. In fact, is this program. I'm just the puppet on the end of her fist. I just never went into the office. I just went straight into the studio. Like, I didn't really feel the need to see anybody. I was just like, what am I going in there for? Sitting down for 2 minutes. Yeah, we used to call me a show and go. Show and go. But, we weren't paid to be in the office. We were paid to do the show. What do I want to go to the office for? Max says I'm working from home at my new job. That's fun. Do you want to tell us what your new job is? It's great to have a new job. Some jobs you can't do from home. I mean, I understand, Some jobs are just impossible to do from home, but other jobs, really easy. And I would suggest that if we're going back to the climate change conversation, anybody who can do their job from home, you're a legal biller. That's interesting. You bill those legals. If you have a job that is possible to be done from home, a billing analyst, thank you, then you should work from home. Like if your boss is giving you the option to work from home or work from the office, and there is a commute involved that might involve you getting in a car and then putting out some carbon emissions, you have a very good excuse. The planet is burning, temperatures are rising, I'm going to work from home. And then work in your pajamas. I really feel like we have to take on a collective responsibility and stand up to our bosses. And I think anywhere that is forcing people to come back to work after a pandemic and during a climate crisis are foolish. Hello, Violet. Yes. Violet's in Indiana and is listening to Backchannel on her Echo speaker. Violet, if you want to join in, then all you have to do is go to backchannel.tv on a web browser and you can type your messages to us. Max says, I live in Virginia, but I work for a New York law firm. Well, commuting from Virginia to New York would not be fun every morning, would it? Let's be honest. So I think you've definitely chosen the correct course of action. A psychologist has kind of done some research on what is the effect of us wearing our pajamas all day. Apparently wearing proper pants is highly overrated. Why get all dressed up when you could just plop down in front of your computer in your pajamas? And although we couldn't help but wonder, Carrie Bradshaw style, if all this leisure wear is affecting our brains, could wearing pajamas all day affect us psychologically? Well, turns out it could mess with your self-esteem. What if you went to the opera dressed in sweatpants, but everyone around you was wearing gowns and tuxes? You'd probably be slumped over in your seat, feeling schlubby and out of place. Apparently, working in your pajamas could make work less enjoyable. The doctor pointed out that I think a study was done in a journal called Human Resource Development Quarterly, found that wearing a nicer outfit might actually change our feelings about our jobs. For example, people felt most authoritative, trustworthy, and competent when wearing formal business attire, but friendliest when wearing casual or business casual attire. So if you've been feeling like you've been dropping the ball at work recently, you might want to swap your PJ pants for something a little bit more office-friendly. There it is. I'm not even wearing pants. What's the point? Listen, thank you for joining me and for joining Backchannel this morning. I've really enjoyed this today. We've had some really deep chats. We talked about, systemic racism, and we also talked about working in your underpants. Well, in your pajama pants. I sleep in my underpants, which is why I presumed that a PJ was an undercracker. We call them undercrackers in England. Not everyone calls them undercrackers, just me and my peers. So, yeah, I really enjoyed hanging out with you today. I'll come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we'll do it again. That's noon Eastern. And if you're free and available and you have access to an Echo Show device, you'll be able to see this show. If you have access to YouTube, you can watch it there. And if not, well, you can just go on the live chat at backchannel.tv and talk to me that way. Thank you to you. Thank you to everybody who joined the show. Marina, Melody, Max, Violet, Kathy, and Max especially, who's telling me right now I get dressed every day. I should hope so. Thanks to producer Carla, and thanks to you. See you tomorrow morning at 9 here on Backchannel. Stay around for, I nearly called him Shallow Hal. Isn't that a great name from the movie Shallow Hal? Your Pal Hal, not Shallow Hal. That was Jack Black. Your Pal Hal is next on Backchannel.